All right, Module 1.3, we want to address the fundamental question. And I've heard this so many times, I'm so tired of it. This idea that you're born an entrepreneur. You were born to be an entrepreneur, right? And then the rest of us weren't, right? And then we talk about that. This is born entrepreneur, this guy's a natural born entrepreneur. Well, the question comes down to, the idea is, are entrepreneurs born special, or can anyone be an entrepreneur, right? Do you have to be special somehow, or can anyone claim to do this? Well, again, I want to point to my wife. There's not an entrepreneurial bone in my wife's body. She has never dreamed of being an entrepreneur. She didn't come from an entrepreneurial family. It's just not part of her DNA. But when she married me, she realized that, she was going to be in a different situation and that life was going to be different for her. A big day at our house is Friday afternoon. I come home and the first question is, not, did you have a good day? It was like, did you pay yourself this week, or did you put more money into advertising? And I'll be like, well, I put some money in advertising. I'm not bringing a check home this Friday, right? That's our lifestyle. And she's come to terms with that, but she's also starting to realize that she wants to play along herself and be part of it herself. And as I told you, she started this little business that's doing so well. I would argue very strongly that she wasn't an entrepreneur until she met me, and that changed her life. But now, if you were to meet her, you'd go, there's an entrepreneur. That's a natural born entrepreneur. Well, just look at her. She's talking about business. She's got sales. She's got revenue. She owns a company. She's an entrepreneur, natural born. No, not at all. Not at all. I want to talk about all of the things that we consider to be the traits of entrepreneurs. And you've heard this. You've heard when you read about Bill Gates or Buffett or any of these famous people, you keep hearing about all of these things, right? They're determined and they're persistent, and they sacrifice, all of these things. Very low need for status, right? Entrepreneurs don't care about what kind of car they drive, right? Because all they care about is how much money they have. They don't need your approval because they got an approval yesterday with that check that came in, right? People are buying from them every day. I don't really care what you think of me. I have 4,000 customers that pay me every week. Why would I care what you think, right? That sort of an attitude. All of these things are very true. And I think we can find these in a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Entrepreneurs are great at selling, supposedly. They're all great at leadership skills. Well, if we start looking at entrepreneurs, we'll find that this is not true for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? Like Zuckerberg, right? The guy who started Facebook. Let's just take any of these. Is he good at time management? From what we know about Mark Zuckerberg, is he good at time management? Did y'all see the movie, social media movie? Right? And he was working 24 hours a day, losing girlfriends because of it. I would say he's not particularly good at time management. Maybe he is now. Maybe he's got his life back where he's actually able to spend some time with his wife and everything. But it seems to me like he's not living a very well-managed life. I don't see that in him. What about persuasion? Is he good at persuading people? I don't know. He's also has a reputation for screwing his best friend, right? What was the friend's name? Savin. Mark Savin. The guy left the country, he got screwed so bad. Moved to Singapore, right? I don't know that Mark Zuckerberg is good at persuasion. What about selling? No, he's not good at that. He's horrible at that. What about negotiating? Well, he negotiates with a team of lawyers and screws you, right? So I don't know he's good. And no one would call him a good leader. They had to bring in a leader, right? So I don't know that any of these necessarily are true about him. And we could pick a lot of other people, say Steve Jobs, right? Is Steve Jobs good at some of these things? Well, Steve Jobs is actually very good at some of these things, right? But he was still despised, right? Still no one liked him. He had a daughter that he never spoke to, So I don't know that any of these skill sets are going to give us the absolute definition of what we have to be an entrepreneur, what skills you're going to have. I like a lot of this stuff, though. Ability to conclude deals, strategic thinking, all of this is true. It'd be great if I could have all of these as an entrepreneur. This would be fantastic. I'd love to love what I do. Y'all are going to hear in a minute what I think about passion. I could care less about passion. Jeff loves his business. I could care less about liking my business. And I'm going to prove that too, that it's irrelevant if you like your business. As a matter of fact, it's bad for you to like your business, right? We're going to talk about that. Are all entrepreneurs hard workers? No. Is a Virgin guy, what's his name? Richard Branson, a hard worker? You ask him and he said, like, I work an hour a week. Even when I was 20, I worked an hour a week. He's really productive during that hour. But I don't know that we would say that they're a hard worker, right? So tons and tons of things that we say are crucial to being an entrepreneur, and I think we could prove every one of them is irrelevant. We could find 20 entrepreneurs that are not persuasive. We could find 100 entrepreneurs that are not good at motivating their employees. So what does it come down to? What is the one thing that all entrepreneurs have to have as a character trait? We've listed about 40 so far. What is the one thing they all have to do, though? I think it's one thing. What's your thoughts, Barry?
Well, I was thinking it's the ultimate desire.
I think that's all it is getting your ass off the sofa. That's all it is, right? I mean, to be an entrepreneur, do you have to go take a test and pass it? No, you don't. Do you have to go get a certification from the government? No. All you have to do is take your hand, put it up over your head and say, me. I am now an entrepreneur. That's all it takes, right? And all of the rest of it is just puff. All you have to do is stand up and say, oh, I'm going to do it now. Oh, there's another step. Taking the remote control and turning the TV off, right? And then I also say another thing that you should do is you should take your remote control and very carefully place it on a rock, and then take another rock and pound the remote control until it's smithereens of pieces and never watch TV again, right? Because the one thing that entrepreneurs do, I probably think they work hard at the beginning, right? So I have to put my hand up over my head and say, me, I'm the one who's going to work hard and sacrifice. And so it's all a decision. You have to decide if you want to do it yourself or not. And nothing else matters. You don't have to be persistent. You don't have to be good at sales. You don't have to be a natural born leader. None of those have been proven true historically to be important. They're all great if you can have those skills. But I can give you an example of someone who doesn't have those skills, who is a billionaire and has been very successful as an entrepreneur, right? There's just too many successful paths. The only commonality from all of these people, though, is at some point you read about a point where Bill Gates said, I'm dropping out of Harvard. That was a very proactive hand above the head decision, wasn't it? Right? All of those things. At some point, all entrepreneurs did something to set themselves apart. So when we talk about the academic research, right, and there's been tons of research on entrepreneurs, we find that they are neurotic, easily bored, independent, risk-taking. They have an obscene amount of self-confidence, very good at self-motivating, and they're versatile. That doesn't seem to me as a very good description of a person. Would you like to be called neurotic, easily bored, and overly self-confident? It does sound like a monster and stuff. But on the other hand, a lot of those are very true for me. I am very easily bored. Like in 12 seconds I get bored, and I imagine you do too, right? I am very self-confident to the point of obnoxiousness, my wife says. I don't know what neurotic means, but I'm imagining that I'm pretty neurotic. Again, I don't know that that was the way I was created or if that's the way I became by being an entrepreneur. All I know is that all you have to do is put your hand up over your head and say, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, right? There's been some really interesting research about whether entrepreneurs run in the family, whether it's genetic and all of that. And one of the most studied and often quoted was that entrepreneurs are just deviants. At some level, they are a deviant. And I want to propose that it's just putting your hand up over your head and saying, me. I am going to take this risk. I'm going to do something different. I'm not satisfied working at General Motors or Coke or 3M and being another guy as part of the system. I don't want to be that. I want to be something different. So it's all about, I think, standing up and acknowledging that you're going to be different. I think that there's an inherent desire in some people to excel. All right. I also think that that can come out in your 20s as opposed to 16. Right? Because I look back at myself as a teenager and there was nothing impressive about me. You know, I was number 51 in my class of 100 students. Right? So I was dead average in there. I was athletically, horrible. I can't throw a ball to save my life, can't catch a ball. You know, my 3-year-old, this is an incredible insight into our family. He learned to say iPad before ball. You know, so we don't have balls in our house. We're just not sports people. So by every standard that you would measure me as a kid, I had nothing extraordinary about myself. But at some point in my life, and I know exactly when it was when I got fired from Coke, I had to stand up and say, I'm going to go do something with my life. I'm going to work harder and be different. I want to be the ones that my friends are talking about, that they're jealous of. Did you hear what he did? Unbelievable. Never thought he would be the guy doing that. You know, my high school didn't do it, but I certainly would have been voted most likely to do nothing, right? And at some point, I just made the decision. So I didn't have any of what we would consider the background, the pedigree, the experience to become an entrepreneur. Just didn't at all. So, but I did have an innate drive to be really successful. Because that, I think, is the number one thing my parents beat into me. You will be successful at something. We don't care what it is, but something you're going to be really good at. And how many of y'all were sort of raised that way, or raising your kids that way? Isn't that what we expect of each other? I want my children to do something really well, and I don't care what it is, just as long as they don't waste their life by being mediocre, right? And I think that that's a lot of what entrepreneurs think. From family, right, a lot of study has been done on whether family can make you more entrepreneurial, and there's been evidence that it can, but also it's not a requirement. You don't have to have an entrepreneurial family. And one of the silliest things I'm seeing is that how universities are spending more and more money trying to teach entrepreneurship, right? I was a university professor for 10 years. Chris, right, my partner, still a university professor. So we believe that you can teach entrepreneurship. But who are the professors of entrepreneurship most of the time? PhDs, all right? So when I left the university like 4 years ago, I was teaching a class very practical. Do this first, do this second, do this third. And I was replaced by a PhD who had spent 7 years writing a dissertation on the following topic. He proved with his dissertation that as a young entrepreneur, you need connections and you need a lot of people to help you. But as your career gets older as an entrepreneur, and say you've been an entrepreneur for 10 years, you don't need as many contacts and connections as you did as a beginning entrepreneur. 7 years to study that. Well, does anyone disagree with that statement? Isn't it the most obvious thing you've ever heard? 7 years it took him to prove that. Something that we all already knew. Inherently, we just understood that, right?
Who paid him to do that?
You did? You did. State university, state tax dollars, your money, 100% was paid for. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. And the rest of us feel a lot better now because now we understand entrepreneurship. Before, I didn't understand the value of connections. But now, after reading his dissertation, thank God I know that I need to go and network. Stupidest thing ever, isn't it? Just insulting. But imagine that person teaching you entrepreneurship. And that's who teaches at the universities today. So I'm very down on universities trying to teach entrepreneurship with PhDs who have never started a business. You ever heard that joke about the brain surgeon who's never been a brain surgeon? Right? Standard thing. Do you want to learn entrepreneurship from someone that's never fired anybody? Right? I mean, there's nothing like being an entrepreneur until you have to fire somebody. My brother is at a startup right now. He's the president. And his job last December 20th was fire 25 people on December 20th because they knew that they couldn't pay them January 1st, right? So imagine firing half your company 4 days before Christmas, right? No one at the university is going to teach you how to do that because they don't understand that circumstance, that situation. All right, so the most important thing is that we've taught thousands of people to be entrepreneurs in the last 10 years. Between Chris and I, we added it up. And we got to like 19, 20,000 students that we've had who've gone through our system of learning how to do this, right? And learning all of the different pieces. And so we believe very, very firmly that anyone can be an entrepreneur. If my wife can do it, if I can do it, anyone can do it, right? Because we're not entrepreneurial people. We are now, but you wouldn't have looked at us 10 years ago, 20 years ago and said, oh, there's a born entrepreneur. No, you would have looked at us and said, there's the daughter of a doctor. That's what she comes across as, the daughter of a doctor, right? Not an entrepreneur. But we will show you how to do it, I promise. It can be taught, and we're going to show you how to do it.